April 2026. We haven't talked for a while. How are you doing, Phil? And the other thing is, do you want to just summarize briefly on your history with all the other stuff that's going on? Particularly a group of British contactees.
Yeah, I'm Phil. I started on a journey in about 2008. I had my own awakening, and it progressed into contact with interdimensional beings, with about 10 to 12 people. All had various different forms of contact, from seeing UFOs, spiritual awakenings, having face-to-face encounters. For me, it was in 2012, and yeah, that summarizes things pretty nicely.
Now, it's very interesting you've mentioned interdimensional beings. There's an awful lot of different types of beings, and the term alien has been attributed to them maybe incorrectly.
Yeah, I would say so. At least given my experiences and what I witnessed, there was definitely what appeared to be a dimensional aspect to them. They seem to be able to transcend the boundaries of space and time, not like we can. What I could only observe to be a form of teleportation, or they just disappeared. So I would say there's a dimensional aspect to it, for sure.
Now, how would you explain that? How would you suggest that actually happens, as opposed to being taken in a spaceship?
Yeah, the abduction stuff has never really been my cup of tea. It's all a bit intrusive.
But there's a reason for that. There was a bunch of aliens seen in Gateshead, I think, during the war. And they were looking at the Americans as they were going through Gateshead, when the Americans arrived in what, 44 or whatever. And they were looking at this and very interested in it. And one of them was left behind. But the thing which got me was Richard D. Hall did a lot of work on that. And what he seemed to, the drawing about their spaceship looked more like a portal rather than a spaceship. But one of them was left behind, and he ended up being buried in a church nearby, in a basement of a church or something, and or it was so. And a colleague of mine, we ran a radio station on the Irish border, and it was near a place called St. Patrick's Chair in Well, and he seemed to step over a babbling brook into another realm. And there's a whole pile of stuff about that. Interdimensional, the Fae, the She, and then we got Sasquatch and these other beings who are in another dimension, but they can visit us, for want of a better term. So do you want to just talk all about that?
Yeah. One of the themes when I had contact was all communication was done via telepathy, which is a far more efficient way of communicating. So I got a lot of information all at once. And I would definitely agree with you on the Bigfoot factor. The way I would describe that is that, how we've got monkeys and apes and things like that, gorillas, we would consider them primitive. I believe that the interdimensional being is potentially a new categorization of hominoid. And I would probably categorize that, like we're Homo sapiens, I would probably say they're probably something along the lines of Homo dimensionals, which, like you said, allows them to transcend the boundaries of our space and time into this dimension. But then there's another aspect to it as well. I would say a large part of it is that our minds are deducing reality. So our minds are really only prepared to see what the mind will let them see. So I think that there's an element of that as well. But
I would suggest that's key. If we don't recognize something, our eyes don't see it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And one of the themes of before I had contact in 2012, I had a conversation with a chap called Dave, who was on the podcast before, and it was 5 years prior. And we were having a philosophical discussion, and the question came up, do you think aliens are real? I gave the generic answer at the time. I said something along the lines of, yeah, they've got to be. The universe is too massive. I then relayed the question back to Dave, And he looked back at me with the truth in his eyes and he said, I know they're real. That obviously piqued my curiosity. And I asked him, how do you know? He goes, because I've seen them. I've met them. By that moment, I just said to him, I said, let's get an intro. Can you introduce me? He said, yeah, no problem. But what happened after that discussion is it took me 5 years to change my perception of what's possible through the mechanism of belief. And what I had to do was train my mind to believe it was possible and thus change my perception of what's possible. And a big theme of the contact in 2012 was there was a distinction made to me. It was almost like a question in the form of a distinction. They said, do you believe it when you see it, or do you see it when you believe it?
Oh,
And in that moment, I realized that you see it when you believe it.
that's a good one, Art. That's a very good one.
It's always good to have a distinction. It allows you to decipher the problem at hand. And so, yeah, I say to anyone and everyone, if you're dedicated enough, you can definitely have experiences with these beings. But it requires a lot. That 5-year period was hard. It was tough. It was, falling out of society, not really knowing what day it was, let alone, what month you were in. You kind of knew it was summer or winter, but you had a good indication of what time of day it was based on if it was light or dark, but that was about it. And it was about going on a journey to change my perception of what was possible. And I got frustrated along the way. I never doubted Dave, but I most certainly began to question what I was doing. But I persevered, and one night in September time, 2012, it happened. And it was probably the most amazing experience of my life.
So, what happened? What was happening? Explain or describe.
Sure. I'll go through the day, what happened that day. Dave periodically liked to go camping. He was in the military and he's that way inclined. And I went to visit him. He was camping on a nature reserve just off the back of a housing estate. And he set up a tent in tree cover and he had all the utensils, tea making facilities, chairs. And we were sat there throughout the day. And there was two strange things that happened. First strange thing was that Dave was trying to tell me about a dream that he'd had, but he kept forgetting it. He'd go, "Oh, that dream," and then it would, like most of us, you would forget it. And he kept doing that all throughout the day. And as we're sat having a cup of tea, we're inside the tent. We're under a tree, and the shadows of the leaves created a formation on the tent. And I was looking at it, and it seemed to make up a really, really realistic three-dimensional face, almost like a bit filter. And I was sat at one angle, and I said, "Hey, Dave, look at that face." And he turned and looked at it from his angle, and it was there, perfect. But it was most definitely just the shadows of the leaves on the tent. So we just sort of shrugged it off, thought it was a bit weird. Well, that evening came, and Dave and I decided to go out go see some UFOs, basically, because it's just a frequent thing.
Oh,
As
the
we're
old
walking
frequent look out for UFOs thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying the word summon, but if I set my intention that I'm going to see them, then we're going to see them.
I think that's called a CE6 or a CE5, where you bring them
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I can get into different encounters with UFOs, and different experiences with group experiences. People ask me, can I take them to see them? And I agree. But going back to the day with Dave, we set out on a walk about maybe 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. And we're walking down this nature reserve on a dirt track. And Dave turns to me and says, "Oh, that dream. I remember now." He says, "This is where it happens for you." And I absolutely knew what he meant in that moment. And I was completely at peace with it. And that's another big theme of having contact. You can't be scared when it's happening. You have to feel the peace. And at that moment, I definitely felt the peace. And I absolutely knew it was going to happen. So we're walking down this lane. no more than 2 minutes, and I see something in my peripheral vision to my right. So I stop, I turn my head slowly, and lo and behold, I can see a type of human or hominoid that I've never witnessed before. Um, the initial telltale sign was that there was an area of distortion around this being. It seemed to be distorting our physical reality. So I thought, well, I'm going straight in. I'm going in head first. So I walked over to what appeared to be a woman. Um, and I stood face to face with her, quite close. My mind went into a state where I wanted to validate the reality of what I was experiencing. But before I could get too heavy into that, I could almost hear a voice in my head trying to grab my attention, and the voice was saying, "Hello, I'm up here. Yeah, it's me up here. Hello." I said, "Wait, is that you?" She goes, "Yeah, that's me. That's me talking to you." And then after I realized what was going on, the communication went more into thought form, where I was just getting information. But what seemed to be happening was anytime I went to think of a question to ask, I already had the answer before I could even verbalize it. Um, and still, my mind wanted to validate the validity of the experience. So I reached out, I touched her on the shoulder. I thought to myself, "You're solid." She sort of shivered and said, "Not as a preference." Um, and I had my attention drawn behind me, and I looked back, and I couldn't see anything. But then when I looked back to this being, she had her arm up, and she was pointing back in the direction I was looking. But I looked back again, and I couldn't see anything. So, I she goes. Then she says, she sends a message saying, "If you want to validate that I'm real, why don't you go and get your friend?" So I look around, and Dave's over there, and he walks up, and Dave says, is the only one to really verbalize anything during that encounter. He says, "Oh, hiya, mate." Um, at this point, I'm beginning to feel a bit uneasy with what's going on, because this is like nothing I've ever experienced before. So, and then with that, what happened was we both raised our hand to each other, much like this, and then she disappeared. Dave came over to me and said, "What was all that about?" I was in a state of total shock, and Dave said, "Come on, let's move along." And we just continued on our walk. I couldn't talk about what happened afterwards at all. I'd be interested to actually have a conversation with Dave and see what he remembers from after the event and what I was like, because I was in a state of shock, I would say.
Well, what sort of was this at night? Was it lit? Was it illuminated? Or what? What?
Yeah, so we were in a nature reserve, so there was no street lights or anything like that. Um, but it was at night. It was quite late, about 11 o'clock, and there was light. From the distortion, there seemed to be light emitting, and the distortion was almost like a sphere around the being, but the sphere was made up of these multicolored squares almost, and the squares themselves on the edges had a weird sort of like dimension to them that I'd never seen before. It was like you could see round the edge. It was very, I can't quite put it into words. It's very peculiar. I've never seen it before.
If you looked at sort of the way digits fragment on a picture, would it be
Mm.
a bit like that? If you have dropout on a digital picture, it would get squares or pixels or something. No.
It was almost like a hologram. Yeah, it was almost like a hologram of squares is the best way to describe it. But when you moved angle, it's not like anything changed. Uh, all the squares were multicolored, and in the center of it was this being. So going back to your concept about the portals, perhaps it was some kind of wormhole portal or something like that.
And can you describe the being?
Yeah, most certainly. I was in a heightened state of awareness, so um, the being was hominoid, arms, legs. Um, Now, from what I could tell, they had different features to what we had. They were human by nature, or hominoid, nose and all that kind of stuff, but features were slightly more refined. This one had a slightly elongated jaw, and had at the time had quite bigger eyes than what a human does. But there was around the silhouette of the being, they were almost glass-like by nature. They had a sheen to them. But black hair, was slightly shorter than myself. I'm 6 foot, and that was probably the best description I can give, really.
And I mean, were they tall? Did they have a vocal voice? What was their voice sound like? Was it your voice? The voice you
No,
have?
so no words were spoken, but the voice that I heard in my head was it was slightly different to my internal monologue. Um, it was nearly the same, but it was the way they grabbed my attention by going, I'm up here, it's me, yep, me up here.
And
And
where
then
was
when
up
I
here? Was it like up in the sky or what? Or
up in my mind, they were trying to draw my attention to the internal monologue and tell me that it wasn't me basically, and it was them communicating. And after we established a connection on that level, the information just became synchronized through almost like brainwaves. It was instant knowing of things. I would go to think of a question in my mind, and they were so connected that they could see I was about to form a question. It was like they had access to the same thoughts that I had. And before I could even verbalize the question, I already had the answer.
that's called precog.
Mm,
Well, it's known as precognition,
mm.
as opposed to precog.
I don't think with my internal voice most of the time.
It's a bit like I want to raise my arm, so I don't have to tell my arm to raise it. It just
Hmm.
happens. But it's it's like a voice. If you Anyway, it happens before the
Exactly,
action.
exactly what you're saying. Exactly what you're saying. It was almost like when you think about breathing, when you breathe, you don't think about it. It just happens. And it was a very similar mechanism, I would say. Very similar. Um,
So what about Dave? How did he work, and why did you need to bring him in, or did you sort of know that you needed to bring him in?
well, 5 years ago, I'd asked for an introduction, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And Dave had gone through, before we met, Dave had contact a lot, and he had to piece all this together on his own. Um, he didn't have anyone to help him. He must have read 400 books on different subjects to try and piece it together. And thankfully, I had Dave because he could, during this 5 year period, he could explain to me the concepts that were needed to change my perception of what was possible to even have the experience. Um, I think for me, I wouldn't have wanted to have done it on my own. I think the reason Dave was there was two of us, is so that we could validate the reality of the situation. Because it's having one person said they saw an extraterrestrial or an interdimensional being is good, right? But having two people that said they saw the exact same thing is much better.
So it's
So
what he saw the same as what you saw.
absolutely. And we did a report with the Birmingham UFO group and with Dave Hodrian.
Yes.
And Dave drew a picture from his point of view. Now Dave's no artist, but
Yeah.
he
But
seemed
I
to
mean, are we
capture.
talking 10 years ago, 2012? Yeah.
Yep, 2012.
Yeah.
It was after the event, so it was maybe 2014, 2015, something like that, when we
Yeah.
actually
I
did the
think that's
report.
after our connection with the Amash thing fell apart. I'm very sad about that. But that's how I was communicating with Dave.
Mm, yeah,
He's
and
done a number of presentations for us and things. So, but I think their work is one of the best. The way that they work.
Dave Hodrian is very thorough. Absolutely, he went. When he was investigating this case, because it wasn't just Dave and myself. There was other people. Some of them chose to remain nameless or have pseudonyms. But there was about 12 of us that was having contact in various different forms. And Dave Hodrian, he came down to visit for the weekend. He submerged himself. He went to all the sites where people had contact. And
That's a lot of work. It's a lot of expense and a lot of work and a lot of dedication. I didn't know that you'd had contact with Dave Hodrian, and it's important because it's his case, it's his work. But okay, that's a Birmingham UFO group.
yeah, and when a part of the report was my experience, one of my experiences, and Dave drew a picture from his point of view. Like I said, he's no artist, but he seemed to capture the features. Like he seemed to capture, the size of my nose and the style of my hair, and he definitely captured the features of this being. Just the way the shoulders were proportioned, the color of hair, the style of hair, facial features, and the pictures in the report. He drew it, but Dave drew that he could see two people stood behind me as well that I couldn't see. So when I was looking back, I couldn't see them. But in Dave's picture, he's drawn those two beings. I think what was going on is I was just being a bit overloaded, and I think if there was three of them there, I probably would have found the whole thing a bit threatening. And the entire event was from what the ETs said. They planned it. It was they working me out to figure out how to keep me calm. But when I saw this picture that Dave drew, that's when I got a bit scared, because at this point I knew that what we had experienced was happening. It was completely real, and it scared me for a while because it meant, and I had a realization. One of two things were either true. I'm an idiot. Why am I discovering this stuff? Why am I seeing it? Surely our best minds should know about it. Or they do know about it, the government knows about it, and they're covering it up. Both scenarios are equally as terrifying. That was what I realized.
Well, I think with the late Nick Pope passing, I think the government's completely. That's the whole point of his phrase, long time ago, way back in the early '90s. UFOs no defense significance because they're completely involved with them. That's why it's not significant.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And the UFO term, we're fooled into thinking everything's in a 3D, 3D plus time, space time confined box. And if we're not in that, the term is an Einsteinian trick where you lock your consciousness only to 3D, which but you haven't done that.
Which is the perception of the possible, right? So if you're saying it's unidentified, then that's your perception of the possible. But the term has changed recently to like
UAP.
UAP, yeah. So that's interesting. I would say that there are probably levels of the governments which are working with them. But where, when, I wouldn't know.
Well, let's focus on your group and the other 11 or whatever and all that. Dave and the whole. When you say Dave, are you talking about Dave Hodrian or Dave, your other friend?
Dave Hunt.
Dave Hunt. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, two Daves. Dave Hodrian from Birmingham UFO Group and Dave Hunt, who I met in about 2008. Yeah. So Dave really went on to facilitate contact for people who wanted to, and it was a long journey from maybe 2008 to about 2015. There was from what I can remember, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who had face-to-face contact, without any plausible doubt. Like I'm awake in the world, and here I am finding myself stood in front of these beings.
This was definitely external to it was visual. You could see as opposed to being in your mind.
Yeah, could see them, could touch them. They were solid. At least from my experience, I can't talk about the others. I know briefly about the other experiences that other people had.
Well, let's go on with this. Just keep going.
So I guess in the lead up to it, you had to change your perception. So after I met Dave in 2008, we kind of went on I went on a spiritual awakening journey where I had to now change my perception of what was possible. So that involved a lot. We actually went down to visit Wiltshire a lot, and Avebury was a hot spot for, or almost like a training ground for this kind of thing. We would go there on the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. I think it's about June 21st, and there's a lot of people there. A lot of people flock from all over the UK to attend, and yeah, there was a couple of strange events that happened for me there. I had to go through what was known as an ego loss or an ego death. And that was an interesting event where there's a group of us, maybe five. We're all sat in a tent. It's at night. We've got a sort of a big 12-man tent set up, where we're all gathered, just sort of socializing, drinking tea. And I noticed that Ricky and Dave, they both looked to the tent entranceway, and then they both begin to turn and look at each other, and they just nodded and smiled. I thought it was a bit strange, but I didn't think anything of it. And then I noticed that Dave had put sunglasses on inside the tent, which I thought at the time was a bit strange, but didn't really think anything of it. And then we were having a group conversation, and every time I had a question in my head, I would turn to look at Dave for some reason. And when I turned to look at Dave, time would stop. Everyone stopped. And I had that same sort of telepathic communication where I had a question, and by the time I turned to look at Dave, it was already getting an answer, and time was stopped. And then when I turned to look back round at the group, Dave does this with his finger, and every time becomes elastic. It speeds up to where it's supposed to be on the timeline. So everybody moves really quickly back to where the timeline's supposed to be. This happened maybe 3 times where I turned to Dave, had a question, and the same thing would happen. Time would stop. The question would get answered. Dave would point his finger like that, and then the time would start again in an elastic fashion until it caught up with where the timeline was supposed to be. After about the 3rd time, I thought this was highly unusual, what I was witnessing. Highly unusual. So at that point, I turned to Dave and I said, well, I didn't say anything. Well, I did. I turned to Dave and I said, take off your glasses. And Dave took off his glasses. And when I saw his eyes, I wasn't looking at Dave's eyes. They were almost big and black, is the best way to describe it. And when I saw them, I felt like I fell backwards, screaming. I thought it felt like I was falling off a cliff backwards, and I couldn't see anything. Everything blacked out. And once I fell down to the ground, I was screaming, and everyone else in the tent was a bit shaken up about it. And I calmed down. I eventually sort of come to, and I open my eyes, and Dave with the sunglasses sort of hovers over me like that, and he sort of waves like that. And then Dave goes away, and then everybody else gathers over me. They go, "You all right? You all right?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm all right. I don't know what happened," but I was completely calm after that, and just settled back down. So that was an ego loss event, which helped me change my perception of what was possible. I was a bit of a joker at other people's expense up until that point. But after that, I became kinder, more compassionate, more empathetic. Dave and I spoke about what happened maybe a month later, and he explained what had happened from his point of view. He said that some of his contacts had come in. They asked to share his body to get a message to me, and Dave facilitated, and he saw them come in, and he saw them leave. So that was
How did he
That was a big
perceive them
event.
coming and going, or coming and leaving?
So when they first came in, there was Dave and somebody else. You know, the other person who saw them was probably one of the first people that Dave had group contact with. So their contact was more potent. So they had already attuned their minds to be able to see them
So
or
you're
catch a
talking about
glimpse of
another
them.
physical person standing with Dave.
Yeah, sat with Dave in the tent. So Dave was sat here on this side to me, and then the other person here, and then the door was there. But when they came in, I noticed both of them looked to the door like that, and then they both looked at each other, and they both nodded and smiled like that and laughed, as if they'd both seen something. And at that point, Dave was asked if he could share his body in order to get a message to myself, and that was to have the ego loss, which would open up the door for contact in the future. And there was other people in the tent as well who had various forms of contact. I would say that we'd all seen UFOs, most definitely.
Sorry, it's the mechanism of when you lose your ego. What's involved with that from your internal perception?
So, from my internal perception, when I asked Dave to take off the glasses, what I perceived was my vision went to black. I lost my balance because I'm sort of on my knees in a
So
tent.
you went blind, or was it him that disappeared into darkness? What? How?
Everything went black. I could see nothing anymore.
So he took his
And
glasses off,
mhm.
and then did you see something in him, or what?
I looked into his eyes because I thought it was strange that he had sunglasses on inside at night in a tent. So once he took his glasses off, I looked into his eyes, and it was like looking into the abyss. It was just like, and well, once I looked into his eyes, my entire vision went to black, and I lost my balance and I fell
I mean, did
backwards.
you fall into his blackness? I think this is
I,
very important because was he some kind of energy projection of some kind?
so at that point, Dave was sharing his body with an extraterrestrial or an interdimensional being.
It's like the Invisible Man. They have to wear glasses because you don't see what's behind him. So because they have to have
Mm.
maybe the
I'm not quite
invisible.
sure.
Maybe H.G. Wells was describing a similar thing to what you're
Hmm?
describing.
I'm not quite sure what I saw exactly. I just know that once he took his glasses off and I could see his eyes, which I couldn't see very well because it was dark inside. And I just noticed, and once that happened, just a blackness in my vision happened. And I couldn't see anything for a minute. And I just fell backwards, screaming, because I'd lost my balance. I was all disorientated. But it was this, but that wouldn't normally scare me, you know? Not, I mean, I don't scream, you know, Miles. I don't shout or anything like that. But I gave out a physical like roar, you know, and I continued to until I calmed down after a minute. I was lying on my back on the floor, and it was after, you know, I just felt like total annihilation had happened. I wasn't feeling like my normal self. Um, I felt like parts of me had changed, been taken away. Um, it was very disorientating. And I believe that there was parts of my ego that no longer served me being removed or disappearing.
Did something happen at the instant the glasses came off? Did you see something, or did something come towards you when you took when he took the glasses off?
Nothing came toward me. It was just my vision
Or did you fall
went
into
to,
him, into
I fell
his?
backward.
Ah, you
So
fell
Dave was in
backwards.
front of me and I just fell, my vision went black and I fell backwards. Um, Nothing came out of Dave's eyes. I'm not quite sure
But
why that happened
but you
or
didn't
what
see
happened.
eyeballs. Did you just see blackness?
I could just see darkness behind them. But it was poorly lit inside of a tent at night, and there was only a little, you know, those little flashlights you get, those little lanterns.
But I'm sure
So it
people have
wasn't.
taken their glasses off in the tent before. What made it so special now?
Well, people don't normally wear sunglasses inside of a tent. Um, and I demanded that he take them off, and because he was sharing his body with an interdimensional being, apparently Dave says it's like looking into their eyes, and it's a
Right. Okay.
very intimidating experience. And with that, seeing, whatever, I didn't see anything. It was just, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And then this darkness just came over my vision, and that was it.
So really, the purpose of wearing the glasses was so that you didn't notice when something arrived into Dave.
Absolutely. And it's been a common theme. Whenever someone's doing that, they wear the glasses. But it was, he was stopping time, and, everyone was freezing still.
What type of glasses were there? Was there some kind of special glasses?
No, they were just a regular pair of sunglasses. But there is a story with what might be some kind of government agency, and we managed to obtain a pair of their glasses. That's an interesting story, but it's
Well,
completely unrelated to this
let's
event.
talk about it. I mean, are we talking about they live situation? He said,
No,
like the
so
movie.
it was almost like a spy agency of some kind. So Dave and I are close to his house at the time in Bicester. We've taken the dog for a walk at the field, and we've noticed a woman sat in the distance on a bench, but we don't think anything of it. We're just walking in that direction to walk the dog. As we get closer, the woman stands up, starts to walk away, picks off a pair of glasses, looks like she went to put them in a pocket, but then dropped them on the floor. Dave and I look at each other and we're like, bit weird. So we continued to walk in that direction. We went to the glasses, we picked them up, and they were just a regular pair of glasses, but except they had mirrors on the edges so that you could almost see behind you.
Aha,
Um, and
that's a good
we
thing.
recovered them.
That's a bit of a
Yeah,
trick.
yeah. I mean, and we recovered the glasses. We googled
And
the
I'm sure
brand.
that was deliberate. That wasn't a mistake.
No, there was a follow up to that event as well. We took the glasses home. We we photographed them. We googled what they were. They were really expensive glasses from the Spy Master company called Spy Master, and it was a big company
Were
in
they in
London.
West London?
Yeah, that's them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
nice shop. I don't know if they have a tailor's cubicle for you to go into like the man from Uncle. Well, you know what I mean.
mm, yeah, and but it was, and then soon after that, the glasses disappeared from Dave's house. We couldn't find them. He asked his kids if I won't be mad. Have you played with the glasses? Where are they? Thankfully, we photographed them. Um,
Did they
and those
disappear from the
glasses,
photographs?
no, disappeared from the house
No, but
altogether.
I was just interested if maybe they would disappear from the photographs as well.
No, the photographs are on the phone, so I don't think they realized that we took photos of them. But those
I think they
images
did
ended up.
realize that you took photographs of them. Have you tried getting them off the phone? The pictures off the phone.
I think they're in the
I mean, this is
the
obviously years
Birmingham.
ago.
They're in the presentation that Dave gives at the Birmingham UFO group.
Oh, so it's a real picture that still copies and works.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And
Has he
but
tried copying it since? These
I can
things,
I can
you
I
could
can get
ask
you
him,
a
is that
I
photograph
can
still
definitely
around?
get yeah, I can definitely get you a copy of that. But here's where it gets strange, right? So we're at an event in Birmingham where Dave Hojan's doing a presentation on our case, and those glasses are they're shown in the presentation to everyone. And then the event, the conference sort of takes a break for lunch, and we're outside in our group just talking, and out of nowhere in the middle of Birmingham, someone comes up to us and says, walks straight up out of middle of Birmingham, walks straight up to us and says, "You'll never get away with showing those glasses. They're our glasses." And they just turned around and walked off again. They weren't from the event. Um, everyone thought it was strange. We
Well,
weren't
obviously
scared.
you were showing the glasses, or he was.
Yeah,
And what's the point in coming up and saying you'll never get away with it? I mean, has Dave disappeared since, or what?
no, absolutely not. But we have definitely been split up, to put it bluntly. So we now live on different ends of the country. Most of that group of 12 people, we've all been split up. We don't see each other anymore like we used to. We're still in contact on the phone and stuff, WhatsApp. But no, we don't see each other anymore. Um, we all moved to separate areas because of life circumstances, really.
Well, there's nothing too suspicious about that, but I mean, do you think you were deliberately broken up?
I suspect so. Um,
But this is sorry, this is at the beginning, sort of at the beginning of things, isn't it? Let's proceed. Keep going.
yeah, so basically, after the ego death event for me, it was really just, there was one time we used to go camping in Wiltshire a lot, Avebury, and we used to camp up on the hill next to Silbury Hill, and we're camping up there one night, and
Is that the hill opposite Silbury Hill
yeah, you know it, yeah,
on
yeah.
West Kennet Longbarrow?
No, the other way. Yeah, so you got West Kennet Longbarrow, Silbury Hill, and then there's another hill, like a big hill, and that takes you down to the
To
stone
Avebury.
circles if you keep going.
The
Yeah.
which? Yeah, Avebury.
So you got the stone circles in the center of Avebury,
Yeah.
and then you've got that long sort of
The
walkway with
yeah,
stones either
it's I
side.
think they call it the avenue. It's a remaining bit of the avenue.
That's it.
So
Yeah,
you were on top of that hill.
yeah. So as you come down the avenue,
I
you
think that's had some kind of ritual thing up there. There's a tree that they put ribbons and things on it, but they
oh
move.
no, you're thinking of I know where you're thinking. You're thinking of the tree up here. So it's not that hill. You need to
Well, you've
come
got
off of
West
that
Kennet
hill here.
Longbarrow, which is across the
Yep.
A4,
Yep.
but you're not across the A4. You're to the east of Silbury Hill,
Yeah, basically we're on a hill.
northeast.
Yeah, we're on a hill and we can sort of see the top of Silbury Hill. So we've got a great vantage point
Because
of
the
the
other
area.
hill, if you went to the other hill, you're the Beckhampton roundabout almost, and there's a pub there.
No, no, it's
No.
definitely a hill where you can walk over and then you make a left and it
Yeah, but
takes you down
I'm
to that,
saying
that
if
avenue.
you went to the other direction,
Mm.
that's more west. That you're in the West Kennet, you're in the Beckhampton roundabout by then.
You could definitely see the West Kennet Long Barrow from where we were and
Yes,
Silbury
yes.
Hill.
But so that would be in front of you on the hill,
So yeah, yeah,
and
depending on which way you're looking.
The A4 would be between you and that hill.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So
Okay.
you got the A4, then you got Silbury Hill, and then just over here, you've got a big sort of big hill, massive hill.
Yeah.
So we've got a great vantage point of the area. We can see in every direction, 360 degrees for miles. And it gets dark that day. Think nothing of it. Have a good evening. And we wake up quite early because, sleeping in a tent in the summertime gets pretty hot pretty quickly as soon as the sun comes up. And we so someone gets up and out of the tent and says, "Hey, come and look at this." So everyone comes rushing out, and there is maybe one, two, literally 2 fields away, and it's just across the road that you described.
The A4.
Yeah, in one of the farmers' fields, there is a massive crop circle. It is two yin yangs in the formation of a figure of eight, and then around the figure of eight, there is almost like these, almost like tribalistic pattern coming off the side of it.
That would have been an
Um,
Aztec one and one of the Mexican type ones.
um, I'm not too sure
There's
about the
sort of
differences.
I'm sure you could go to the Crop Circle Connector and have a look for that year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely photos of that one online. But what was strange about it is that we were all outside until at nighttime basically, and with the vantage point that we had, we couldn't see any men with boards and torches making crop circles. We stayed up pretty late, maybe one in the morning before everyone went to bed, and we were up at maybe 6 or 7.
And what time of the year is this? June or something?
Yeah, it's between June and August time, I would say.
Right, because you don't have too much time, So it's after the solstice.
Yeah, it's in summertime. It's before I think they crop in August. They cut all the crops down for the
Yeah.
harvest. So it's before that. But the crops are quite big. But there's this huge crop circle, and we're all talking about it. and we were saying, you know, I never saw anyone. I never saw anything make that. Um, it just seemed to appear in the space of about sometime in, you know, 5 to 6 hours. Um, so we all decide that we're going to go and visit it, and we're going to go and you know be inside of it. It's quite a long walk. It's deceiving,
Oh
but
yeah,
you've got to go. Yeah, you've got to go up towards Kennet Barrow,
yeah,
and you got to make a hard left when you get to West Kennet Barrow. Walk down that side of the hill, and then into the next field. That's where it was.
yeah.
And we finally get to it, and you know there's no crops you know damaged on the lead up to it, and we get into the center of it, and a man just sort of pops up and says, you know, and goes, he had a camera. He says, "Does your phones work?" So we looked at our phone, and we all had no signal for some
That
strange reason.
happens near Silbury Hill.
Yeah, I don't know if it was linked or connected, but it was strange that nobody had signal. We
Yeah,
were
that
all on different
Silbury
network
Hill.
providers.
It's West Kennet Longbarrow is a portal.
Mm. That's a great place, West Kennet Longbarrow.
Yeah.
Someone, it's so funny you say that because somebody
There's
else
one at
walked
East
in.
Kennet Longbarrow, but they won't let you in. The owner of
Mm,
the land won't let you in. There is an East Kennet Longbarrow.
mm.
Anyway.
A friend of mine actually had an experience in uh, the Kennet Barrow. He like exactly what you described, a portal. There was three friends went up there one night. Well, I wasn't there, so I'm just relaying this information. Uh, but one of the friends, they all went to the entranceway, and they said it was just lit up, and there was a stairway in the inside. And two of the people that went there sort of looked and thought, "Nah, not for me." But one of them walked straight up the stairs, and don't really quite know what happened after that.
We need to have
And
a date, Bill. We need
I
dates
couldn't
for
tell you.
this.
I'd have to get the information on that one
Because
from
there were
somebody
things
else.
happened to West Kennet Longbarrow, the English Heritage or whatever, she closed it down and changed it.
I didn't witness those events. I'm
No,
just
no, but no,
relaying.
but there was a date when they changed it, so it makes a difference. We
Mm.
need dates. I need the information.
Um, I don't have
Hey, I need
I
the
don't have
information
dates.
here. Okay,
I've got the documents.
you got the documents with a K.
So that was you know, and we saw a lot. That was the first crop circle we'd all seen. But there was a lot more after that. There was many more summers at Avebury. And of course the UFOs were just as spectacular as well. Um,
Tell us all
fine,
about it.
yeah. Um,
Now there are target ranges on Salisbury Plain, and they
yeah.
do fire flares up, and you
Hmm.
can't see them from that area. I'm just
Yeah,
cautioning you here.
absolutely. No, I'm fully
Are
aware
these
of the.
different to the flares and the other things?
Yeah, I know the area you mean. They say you know there's science to say live fire exercises, but oh, I'll tell you about the time where I I took a group of people on my own to go and see UFOs. Um, I always go up to the Ridgeway to do it. I take people to Avebury, and the place I take them is the Ridgeway. And I took a group of people, three people, I think, and they all claimed that they wanted to see them. So I got them up onto the Ridgeway,
Now the Ridgeway is a
and
long walk. Whereabouts are you talking about?
you know the car park across from the Woodhenge.
Yeah, they need to call that the sanctuary, I think.
That's it. That's exactly it. The
Yeah,
sanctuary.
yeah,
So there's these sort of ancient mounds with trees growing on them. We were
yeah.
we were near there,
Right.
and one of the
I
people
mean, you know, I'm
was
in Wiltshire. This is only just round the corner from where I
yeah,
am. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a lovely place. Just you're
It
very
is.
lucky.
It's wonderful.
And one of the people present was antsy, nervous, fidgety, um, and I got a communication to say, you know, calm them down. Basically, we're not coming until they're calm. So in that moment, a strange thing happened where I felt an impulse in my chest just go boom like that. And
Is
the
that
person calmed
from
down
or into?
from out of my chest. It was an impulse, and I could almost feel it like sound hitting your chest, but it was in the other direction. And with that, the person who was anxious calmed down, and this was all in the same moment. The impulse happened, the person calmed, and then there was the first UFO right in front of us. And it wasn't a flare. It was moving slowly towards us, like quite a height, but you could still see it, like quite. You could still make out it was craft, um, but not so much to begin with. And they just kept coming over, one after the other. But and everyone
How
was
many?
quite excited.
What, was this a stream of them or what?
Yeah, stream. I'd say probably not all at once. So one went over because you can get Starlink, although this was before
Oh
Starlink.
yeah, well, I mean, I'm assuming we're talking, 20, almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe this was probably 2020, I would
Oh
say.
right, yeah, okay. Well,
This is recent.
this is only
Yeah,
5.5 years ago.
yeah, absolutely. And
We're now in
so
2026 April.
they kept coming over one by one, slow moving, like not very slow, but slow moving compared to how they can move. And each time they kept getting lower and lower. Um, Everyone was quite happy, but they couldn't really get any lower, if you see what I mean. So I made the suggestion. I said, "Would you should they land? Do you want them to land?" Everyone seemed to be quite excited by that. And the next one that came over, stopped above the field, and then began to lower down. It got maybe 150 feet from the ground, and one of the people, the person who was anxious there, got anxious and scared again.
Oh right.
And with that, they stopped descending, and they then sort of went off again, and just went off, and that was the last one.
And what sort of size were this? How far away?
Well, as it got to about 150 feet above the ground, it was lit up like a ball, but in the shape of a craft almost. But you could make out the edges of the craft, but it was powering up for some reason. Um, and I think I think what went through everyone's head is what's going to happen now, and no one had a reference point for it. These people hadn't done the 5-year work that I had done. Their minds weren't ready really for it. Um, And I've taken people to see them since and as well, or before that, and some people have almost have lost their mind almost from it. Um, so
Well, I think it's
I'm
called
very
bucket full.
mm,
Your mind's
mm,
just full. Can't handle it.
yeah, exactly. I took a group of two more people to see them, but I wasn't. It wasn't the intention to go and see them. I had, to them, I'm just a crazy UFO guy. And when these two people got together, they sort of were making fun of me a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's nervous exhaustion.
So this was before it happened. We were walking to a field on an unrelated matter, and they were making fun of me. So because oh yeah, they were just sort of making fun about the fact that I thought I could see aliens and stuff like that. So I thought to myself, all right then, challenge accepted. So we get to the field where we're going, and I say, "Oh,
Where
look at
is
that!
this?
This is in Bicester. This is where we had the contact in 2012. Um, it's on a public playing field. It's a big field on another housing estate, and we sit down on the bench, and lo and behold, I say, "Oh, what's that?" And they both look, and they're like, "That's a no." I said, "It's not a plane, is it?" And they said, "No." And then it shot off really quick in one direction, then stopped, and then started moving slow again. And they're like, "Well, I've never seen anything move like that before." I said, "Yeah, it's because it's a UFO." They're like, what? No way.
Yeah, they sort of
No
come
way.
in, stop, and then maybe a couple more or whatever.
So yeah, same situation, like one after the other. Once one disappeared, another one came over, and it just kept doing that. But it was doing erratic. They were doing erratic things enough to point out that they weren't planes, if that makes sense. And the people I was with at the time, they were they there was I saw that excitement come over them. One of them was saying, no way, no way, but had a massive smile on his face. And I was like, well, if you're disputing it, why don't you ask them to land or power up real bright? And one of them said, yeah, I want him to power up real bright. But before he could finish his sentence, he got to the P in power, and they were doing just that. They were powering up really bright. And I find that some people's subconscious minds can't handle it. And I find that people try and destroy me, or destroy my life after I show them these things, for example.
It's
In
just too
various
much for them,
ways.
and they can't handle it, so they have to do. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Eject me from their life for whatever reason. Try and ruin my life in the
I mean
future.
that's just up to them. They can't handle it, so they've got to get that out of there.
Yeah. Well, one of them underwent serious psychiatric evaluation after that. So I didn't really want to do it again after that for anyone. But I did it. I've done it once more for other people, and that was a very good friend of mine that I knew from school. And this time I learned to really just keep them at a distance, up high. Um, and I similar thing, just took a friend to a field, and they were much further away this time. They're almost outside the atmosphere, um, and they were just cruising over at very high speed. Thankfully, this time that experience went well. The person hasn't yet tried to destroy my life, and has now gone on to a spiritual awakening themselves. Currently on their subject matter right now is the Phil Schneider uh, documentary, the Phil Schneider in the presentation that he gives. That was one of the last things he posted to me. So he's well on his way to waking up.
Phil
But
Snyder, you're talking about 1989, 88 or something.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, the old
Dulce,
grainy footage.
the Dulce stuff.
Yeah. So
That's pretty heavy. That.
yeah. It's all about the underground bases at Dulce, New Mexico, and the alien bases, 7 stories underground. Phil Schneider claimed he was an engineer that was working on the base, and he claimed to have got shot by some kind of alien weapon as well.
Yeah, there's meant to have been a war there.
Yeah.
What about this country?
Um.
What about your experiences in the group experiences here?
So So the only experience that I had, all of these experiences were in the UK, but the only face-to-face contact that I had in a group or more than one person was that time in 2012 with Dave. And I don't know too much about underground bases in the UK. I'm under the impression that the UK doesn't really get so involved in it like the Americans do. I think the Americans get first pick at all of the new stuff, whether it be, technology, the internet, Silicon Valley. The UK doesn't really have a Silicon Valley. You don't really have too many big tech companies in the UK.
I think
But
a lot of them are quite small, but they certainly do have tech.
absolutely, and I guess a lot of the big tech companies from Silicon Valley pitch up in Ireland is the place where they go.
There's reasons for that.
Yeah. But going back to what you were saying about the various American bases, where we lived in Bicester, there was an American base. It was just on the outskirts of the town. It was called RAF Croughton, And it was recently in the news for there was a chap who was riding his motorbike. And he was called Harry Dunn, and on the base they all it's everything's American. Like the plug sockets are American. They all drive on the wrong side of the road. And a lady called Anne Secundez was driving out of the base, but she went onto the wrong side of the road, and she went head on to this 16-year-old kid Harry Dunn on his motorbike and killed him. Now this is where it gets very interesting
Now
because
this is 10 years ago, is it?
something like that. It was when Julian Assange was still in the embassy.
Right.
So but the reason why I highlight that is because the base got a lot of coverage, and it was discovered that after this lady Anne Secundez went to the police, and the police let her go, not let her go, but pending in further investigation, she fled the country.
Right.
She
She's
went
probably
back to
told
the
to get the
States.
hell out before charges or whatever it is.
Yeah, but this is
Or
where it gets
withdrawn. I
interesting.
mean, what was she, US Air Force or?
This is where it gets interesting because apparently the press were running that she was just a spouse of somebody with a soldier at the base, basically. But if you know the base, then you realize it's a RAF base. It's a what it is. It's actually a CIA base, a DIA base
No,
within
there's two different
a
terms there.
so So Edward Snowden was stationed there for 6 months, and he actively talks about it. It's a listening station. It's twinned with Menwith Hill up in York.
Yeah.
They have a
Does it
project
have
there
these
called
big golf ball
Yep,
things?
absolutely, yep. So it's a CIA. What I don't know if it's CIA or DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency or
Yeah.
Central Intelligence
Yeah.
Agency.
Well,
But it's a
yeah.
base within a US base, Air Force base, within an RAF base.
Yeah.
So
That's the
there's
way it
three.
works. It's like RAF sent Morgan or Bentwaters. It's RAF because it's Britain. The physical boundary is, and then the Americans put their stuff in it, and then that's sovereign American territory. No, nobody's that's America. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then
Bit like an embassy.
where the satellites were was then they had another fence around all of that. And you need special clearance to get into there. But I know people that work there, and they've told me what happens there. There's a project there called Mystic Star, and it's responsible for all of the communications on Air Force One. But where it gets interesting is Anne Secundez claimed diplomatic immunity when she went back to the US once they tried to extradite her. And it was sort of later came out that's what sort of came out that there was a CIA base there.
Well, that's no real
But
surprise. I mean, it's American territory. They're going to have their bases and they're going to have their communications. There's no mystery there, he said.
absolutely. But if going back to a question about the bases and is there anything in the UK, this is probably the best of my knowledge that I've got. Whenever there's something detected in outer space or a sort of airborne object, UFO, there's a room where the Americans will take over from the British, and they will
Oh, so the British are
monitor.
actually working with each other.
British. You've got British soldiers in there. You've got some British soldiers. You've got American soldiers, and then you've got intelligence officers who work in the central part of the base. But anytime there's some kind of unidentified UAP or anything, the Brits are told to leave the command center. The Americans move in, and they use all the equipment to monitor that stuff.
I think
That's
it's
about the
Menwith
only.
Hill up in Yorkshire, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
sister site to it. It's a listening station. Edward Snowden worked there, worked at Croughton, and they basically just intercept communications and deal with communications. They handle all Air Force One communications when it's in the air over Europe. They handle all the VoIP systems and things like that. So they do a lot there.
I
But
think it's the NSA might be there.
yeah, it could
There's
be.
NSA, I think.
Yeah, you're probably right on that one.
But that's
But
so secret. The NSA stands for no such agency.
yeah, other than a black cube in the US building.
Yeah.
but I don't know too much about alien bases or anything like that in this country. Um,
Well, want to focus on your experiences and the experiences with the rest of the other group
mhm.
and how that went, because I think you started questioning the validity of the intentions of these beings in our first chat, I think.
Yeah, Dave definitely did, but Dave's more experienced than I am in this arena. So, you know, and the way Dave puts it to me is, you know, if they were really your friends, if they really wanted to help you, then they'd just show up at your door and have a cup of tea or whatever. But it's all very cloak and dagger under the cover of darkness. So yeah, Dave has expressed that he might not trust them for various different reasons, and I can understand that because you know there were some casualties from our group along the way.
Okay,
Some
let's go
people,
into that in the second hour. How do you want to?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
So there's two people that I'm thinking of. One person called Jay, a friend of ours, who was about Dave's age. He was very much into seeing UFOs and things like that, but his life was incredibly stressful. Um, you know, he was a single father, working a full time job, was living in the shadow of his ex partner's family. He worked at a company that his ex partner's father owned. So it was psychologically tough on him. And Jay was medicating and drinking. He was taking pharmaceutical sleeping tablets, and then drinking quite heavily in the evening as well. And one night Jay passed away. He was quite young. He was in his 30s, 30s to 40s,
What do you mean
probably his
he
late
passed
30s.
away?
He died.
Of what?
Um, we didn't get the information, but we think it might have been related to the sleeping tablets and the drinking. But the sleeping tablets and the drinking was he was doing that because the things that he was seeing were taking a psychological toll on him, take
What
his life and things like that.
what was he saying?
I I don't know. I think Jay just saw some UFOs. I can't remember um, him talking too much about face to face encounters, but I think he was just finding life very overwhelming, and he was medicating, and he basically he passed away. And there was somebody else that I went to school with from a very young age who
Sorry, what sort
like
of age did Dave? But what sort of
sorry,
age was he when he passed?
in his 30s, mid to late 30s, I would say. You know, left kids behind, things like that. So terrible, terrible. Um, but you know, Jay was a good guy. You know, he loved his family, loved his kids.
So we're talking about
Provided.
Joe here.
Sorry,
The guy who passed on was Joe.
Jay,
Jay. Okay.
Jay. Um, and you know, there was another. I guess we'll call it a casualty, and I will keep this person nameless just because they are still with us. Um, but it was someone I went to school with from you know secondary school. We were very close friends. We were best friends, and he had one too many face to face experiences, and he
Can you explain what those are?
yeah, I wasn't with him when he had those. He was on his own apparently. He says to me that he was walking through a park one night, and a being, it was a man, similar distortions that I described around him, and he did not get a good feeling from him. He and he was getting telepathic messages, just basically saying the Kaiser, over and over again. And I think it was from that point onwards, it was his downfall. He began to alienate himself from everyone in our group. Like he fell out with everyone. He got himself into some trouble as well. And then he moved out of the area, and nobody's really heard from him since. I was the last person to keep in contact with him because we were best friends, but I had to stop in the end because he was just just awful. It became awful, you know. Just everything about him was just didn't want to be around him anymore, and it was almost like he was alienating himself. And then he ended up moving to a town where, you know, miles away, where nobody goes to visit him, or nobody goes that we know. So yeah, a few casualties, you know, and it's probably the psychological toll that this phenomena takes on you that probably caused them as well. And then after that point, everyone was split up, or began to be split up, moved across the country, different areas. You know.
So what was
Dave
actually
moved on.
happening with the group? What were you encountering? What sort of things were going on?
So we were all trying to change our perception of what was possible, so that we could have contact in various different ways. And we all dropped out of society for 5 years. Rarely had jobs, things like that, in our youth, and we had spiritual awakening, a lot of them, and most of them just got to the point where they were quite happy to see UFOs and crop circles, but never really wanted to go much further. I'd say there's probably about 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of us, maybe 5, who had. There's 5 of us who had the face-to-face encounters. And Dave was present with 3 other people at the time where they had their first contact experiences. There was other people. There was someone else. I'm trying not to name names.
No, only name things if we don't need to, but or just stick to Christian names.
There was probably the second most experienced person to Dave at having contact. They had a lot of experiences together. Dave talks about it. Lots of contact experiences.
So how many do you say? What's lots? More than 5?
I'd say, yeah, probably something in the region of 5, which is probably a lot. 4 to 5, from what I can remember. They weren't all good either, you know.
Well, let's go into that if you can.
Yeah, sure. So there was an experience with Dave and this other chap that I'm describing, and I think they were driving down the road one night on a bypass, and they saw a light coming down into a field. So they said, yeah, let's pull over and let's
Where
go
was
investigate.
this?
Again in Bicester. Strange. It's an old military town. You've got, you know, 5, 6 military bases there, but I think they've all since been decommissioned. They're from the Second World War era. So a town called Bicester. It was on the bypass around Bicester and one of the farmers' fields by a housing estate called Langford. And so Dave and this other guy decide to pull over, and they go into the field where the craft's coming down. And as they get through the bushes, you've got all these bridleways, which are footpaths. You sort of climb over the fence.
The old go into
up.
the field where the craft comes down routine.
Yeah. So they did that, but they didn't feel good, and they didn't walk up to it. They stayed by the bushes, and this was happening in the middle of the field.
So what did they see?
Well, by the time they got there, they saw a craft that had landed, and there was a line of people walking toward them, and they had these suits on. They had almost like these hazmat suits with the glass front. And
all these people walking in there were dressed like that.
Yeah. Dave drew a picture of it in the report. And what happened was one of them saw them, and in that moment, Dave said that he felt like his face was right here in front of him all of a sudden, and they both felt utter dread within them. And once they felt the dread, they literally both just ran out the field.
Maybe that was a sort of Would you please bugger off, young man, from these beings?
Yeah, if they could give you an international sign for bugger off, that was it. And they both ran back to the car, and once they got back to the car and discussed what would happen, they both realized that they both saw the same thing, a face right in front of them in the hazmat suit, and they both felt utter dread.
And what
by
about the
it.
suit? Did it have any insignia, language, anything,
Ooh, I think it did, but I'd probably have to refer back to the report
In the word,
to know.
in the words of Doctor Evil, give me a bone here, for crying out loud. Sorry.
These weren't my experiences. I don't have them etched in my memory, other than what I've been told and what was on the report.
So
But
this is
I think it's a
chronicled
highlight.
by Dave Hodrian.
This is one of Dave's experiences and the other chap. It's all in the report. I might go and read it again, because it's long. It could be a book or a movie. But yeah, this is just the people that were around me at the time when everyone was going through contact, and yeah.
Keep talking about it. It's fascinating, and all good work to Dave Hodrian.
It was an incredible time. It was probably the most exciting. Well, it was an incredible time of my life and everyone else's. A lot of excitement, and I guess at the time we knew it wasn't normal, but
Well,
we were just
the old sort of interdimensional spaceship landing in a field. Yeah, that happens every day. It probably does.
Yeah, you're probably right. It does. You're absolutely right. But by the time you add it all together, crop circles, contact, UFOs, all the strange events, like the glasses that the lady dropped. You add all these things together, and it's just a series of unusual events. But I say that lasted maybe 7 years.
From when to when?
I would say it was probably from 2009 to 2015 was when peak contact events were happening. Now, and that was for everyone. We could quite happily go out on an evening and just go watch UFOs fly above. And sometimes we're in groups of 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6. And we could all see the same UFOs. And and as time went on, some people dropped away from it.
I think that's normal, isn't it? Yeah.
Didn't want to have the face-to-face experience. Didn't want to meet the occupants.
But let's hear more about the occupants. Calling occupants of interdimensional extraterrestrial craft, somebody once said on a song.
So, from my face-to-face experience, I didn't see a craft anywhere in sight. From what I could interpret, they didn't need craft. They don't need crafts to get here. Apparently, that's more out of respect for our laws of physics. I got this massive download, and I got a lot of information from it. So,
have you made an account of that?
It's just too much, Miles. It's knowledge. You're not the first person to ask me. I was asked just the other week about it. Did I write any of this stuff down? But it's probably best I keep it all in my memory, so it's where it's so fresh.
Yeah, but you can tell me. Nobody else is going to know.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely going to tell everyone.
I'm just being. We're not recording this for anything else. We are.
So machines. They explained a concept to me called the 3 Ts, and they obviously, you got to remember, their intelligence level is far superior to ours. They run rings around. Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Absolutely. They can have memories of the future. So, like we've got memories of the past, they can also have memories of the future. And they were explaining a concept to me like I was a child, obviously, and they said, "Oh, it's the 3 Ts." I said, "What do you mean the 3 Ts?" They said, "Well, telepathy. You can see married couples have telepathy. They love each other, and that's what fuels it. They can see each other on the same wavelength. They can almost see the same thoughts that each other are having. And so then you've got teleportation, which you're not allowed to do at the moment for whatever reason.
Why? What's happening with that? What? You're
Well,
not allowed to do that. No teleportation today.
funny enough, I wasn't there to witness myself, if that makes sense, but it happened that evening. I seem to have teleported that evening. Now, like I said, I wasn't there to witness myself, but all I could only see it was from my perspective. After that night having contact in 2012, I drove home, and arguably I was shocked. So I drove home. It was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning by the time I got home. And I got into bed, and I'm sat there staring into space, absolutely in shock, spangle van dangled. And I'm staring into space, and I've got wallpaper in my room
Yeah.
at the time, and I can see the pattern on the wallpaper.
What type of pattern?
It was just normal sort of.
Could you give us Could you give us a copy of that pattern? Picture.
Yeah, it was
something.
like it wasn't floral, but it was almost like weavy patterns, and then it was almost like different types of weaves of patterns, but they weren't connected. All these different weaves. So I'm sat there just staring into space, and I can see the wallpaper as I'm staring into space. And again, this whole darkness over my vision comes from my peripheral vision, and until the whole scene is gone, and then the darkness subsides again, and I'm back at the experience that I was just in, meeting extraterrestrials again. Almost replaying it. Now, I don't know whether it's because I actually was there, or if I was just having a daydream or whatever, but the room wasn't there anymore. And I was, like I said, I wasn't there to witness myself, so I don't know if, I say teleport, but I probably didn't. I don't know.
Well, there is the expression "gate in."
Yeah,
Gate
you probably
out.
know more about it than I do.
Well, I'm just using some expressions.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. Because like I say, I don't research this stuff too much. I really just sort of go by my own experiences. And I begin to think that it's strange that I'm back at the events from meeting extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings again. And I think to myself, this isn't right. Like this isn't right. But it's not changing. So then I have to think to myself, like, why isn't this right? Why? What's not right about it? So then I go, oh, that's why, because you already drove home from here. You should be 2 miles away from here right now.
Well, I've certainly
And then
already. I've had that experience at a certain facility not too far away from here.
That's interesting.
Cloud's house.
And where was it?
It's a windmill near Cloud's house, north of Gillingham, I think. It's away at the far southwest of Wiltshire.
Yeah.
Well, keep explaining. I want to hear all about this.
So when I thought to myself that it's not right that I should be here because I drove home, the scene went back to normal. Again, from what I was seeing, I was stood in front of the interdimensional beings again. It went to blackness, and then the blackness subsided, and I was back in the bedroom. And I hadn't opened my eyes. I was still in a daydreaming state, and I could see that pattern on the wallpaper again. I hadn't fallen asleep. I was sat up in bed, and that happened the day after. But as the ETs were explaining to me, the 3 T's, it was teleportation, telekinesis, and telepathy. They said you can do telepathy at the moment because it's safe, but they sort of inferred that the government might try to weaponize it if anyone could do the other 2.
Yeah. Well, I've interviewed a number of people who've been able to bilocate. I think Chantel, who was one of the witnesses that Dave Hovden brought forward, Chantel, she was able to be claircognitive and clairacoustic, to pick the whole thing up. And she got some interviews and stuff after all that. But
Yeah, there's a lot of spiritual books about it as well. They say you have to really focus out your current external environment and focus on what you want to be focusing on. Now, I was in a state of shock, and I was focusing on what had happened the day before, so I can completely understand how that can happen. And I think that probably everyone's capable of doing it, but we just don't have that level of focus that's required in order to do it. Not without practice, I would say.
well, let's stick to
Um,
your group's experiences. You mentioned there are three or four others, and they were having further experiences or things started to
yeah, I remember
unravel or
one night.
whatever.
Yeah, I remember one night where it was winter and we were camping in Avebury again, and there was three or four of us. Four. There was four of us, and Dave and I were stood outside having a sky watch, and couldn't. We weren't seeing anything. There was nothing. We weren't seeing anything. So
How was
it
it?
was getting
Clear?
really.
I mean, cold, clear, misty. What?
It was a cold night. It was in the winter. The sky was relatively clear, mostly clear with partial cloud cover, and it's really cold. I decide that I'm too cold and that I'm going to get into the tent. But there's another chap already in the tent. For someone who's there, he's just had a nap. Funny enough, and as I'm getting in the tent, I said to Dave, "I'm going to go warm up in the tent." And as I'm getting in the tent, this chap, the guy that was sat next to Dave when I had my ego loss, he he's getting out of his sleeping bag and getting his shoes on and whatever else. And he goes, "Oh, Phil, are you going to come have contact?" I'm like, "What do you mean have contact? I've just been out there. There's nothing out there. It's too cold. I need to get in my sleeping bag." And he's like, "No, no, no, come with me." I'm like, "No, I'm staying in my sleeping bag. It's far too cold." And lo and behold, that night, literally, as soon as he walked out the tent, there was 10 to 16 greys
Oh,
out
the old
there.
10 to 16 grays
Yeah, yeah, and
outside,
they're
outside
outside. Yeah,
the tent. And where was this? Was this in Avebury or precisely where?
the same place where I had my ego loss that I described, across from Silbury Hill. But that's our favourite camping spot where the dog walkers go.
Yeah.
And we camped there. I'm getting in the tent. I'm
Explain
saying
about the
no, I don't.
grays. Give us details. I want details.
Yeah, so Ricky it describes them as um, some. They're all different sizes. They were the traditional looking greys. Some were shorter, some were taller, but there was one being there that was very different to the others, the greys, right? The greys were playful by nature, and the chap that had the encounter says he went out to see them. He was just playing around with the greys for a minute, and then he noticed this other being, almost like the character from Pirates of the Caribbean, the guy with the octopus beard.
Explain. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Davy Jones, I think his name was.
The Davy
Anyway,
Jones. Yeah. Whatever.
there's one being there that's got this octopus beard, almost like just the way this chap described it. And apparently he asked him, the ET asked my friend if he could have his tobacco, his pouch of tobacco.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, the ET asked him for tobacco.
asked him for his pouch of tobacco. Yeah, okay, I think he said yeah, sure, gave it to him. And I'm not really quite sure what
So,
happened. I'm not too sure. Those are about the only details that I know from that event, because I'm getting it sort of secondhand from somebody else. But what was strange was the morning after. After we all woke
the
up, it's still
actual event
cold.
wasn't strange. It was the morning after.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there to witness it because I was too cold and went into the tent. But yeah, I would say that for my friend, it was just a normal occurrence at this point. And but what we all found strange is that the morning after, my friend comes out and tells us all about it. We're all outside making tea, a cup of tea, and we're all sort of gathered in a circle. And Dave goes to roll a cigarette, and Ricky says, "Ah, can I have one of those?" And Dave says, "Have you not got your tobacco?" He goes, "No, I gave it to that dude last night." And with that, a pouch of tobacco falls out of the sky and lands on his shoulder and falls onto the floor. And we all witnessed that, you know.
Was it the same pouch?
Yeah, it was the same pouch.
You
And
would have a thing
we're in
called, you'd have a thing in Rendlesham Forest, they're called a ports, where a stone would just materialize out of thin air and drop.
yeah, it was probably something very similar to that.
And was this being quite high or what?
There was no being in the sky that we could see. From what I could understand, my friend described him as being similar height to him. And the Greys were all different types of sizes. You had the short ones, you had the tall ones. There's about 16 of them apparently. And then this other entity with the octopus beard.
That
And
would infer that the Pirates of the Caribbean is a programming movie about aliens.
is it? I didn't even
Well, I
realize.
mean, if they've got Captain whatever, there's octoforms with octopus legs.
Yeah, I don't really know too much more about the features because I didn't see it. But there's always just been a series of strange events just like that, and different people from the group have witnessed individual events that they've seen, or there's been group
Are
events,
any of the
or
group, would they want to talk about things like their own experiences like this? For the
um,
record.
I think we've asked them in the past, and Dave and myself seem to be the bravest ones for whatever reason.
Okay, well, it's
Um,
entirely up to them. The invitation's there.
Absolutely, we can definitely ask again. Maybe thoughts have changed on the matter.
To get their experience on the record, and I know Kerry Cassidy would be very keen to hear this at her conference in
Mm,
the end of July at High Elms Manor. We're speaking here,
yeah,
and my conference is at the third weekend of June, which you're
still need to
welcome to
message.
attend if you can.
Yeah, I still need to message Dave about that one, but I
Yeah,
definitely will. I'll
yeah.
do it straight after this. Um, yeah, so
This is up
you know,
to you guys. It's to talk about it.
it would probably be good if we try and get together as a group and just
Yeah,
relive the experiences.
yeah. If you
You
just
know,
want us, we could set the chairs up on stage or something. But who knows? We'll work it out. It's whatever works by you guys.
that might work actually better than yeah, that might work better, and then we can just all reminisce about what
Yes.
happened. Really, it'll probably we haven't seen or spoken to each other in years, so it'll be a good exercise in trying to find discrepancies. Um,
Well,
Dave
that would be
Hodrian
good. That'd
found
be excellent.
Dave Hodrian did find a couple of discrepancies in our case, nothing major, and he said that it's not enough to refute anything. It just comes down to people remembering things slightly different.
If
And I think
people
he
wanted
words
to look
that.
up Dave's research, what would the case be called, and where would they get it?
You can go to the Birmingham UFO Group website. I think it's BUFOG,
Bufog.
and then if you go to the search bar and search for the Bicester case, that's Bicester. Bicester case, and I think it's about 4 parts as it stands at the moment.
All right. I
Um,
noticed your light's gone off. Ah, it's gone back on again.
yes, it's my. I've got a big TV in front of me.
Oh, right. So,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I just make sure it's on a white screen when I do these calls,
Oh, right.
and
Oh, yeah. Right. That's a good way of using it. Yeah, that's a good way of using it as a light. Actually, that's very inventive. But anyway,
yeah. So you know, there's a lot of detail. I mean, the download for me was it really set me on my like spiritual journey. and I've gone on to do things since, which been quite important, but I probably shouldn't get into it because it's slightly unrelated. But during COVID, I was very active, doing various different things, and I always try and help people on their awakening journey and things like that. So,
How would you
um,
do that? I mean, if did you run something that people could phone up or make contact? Do you want to explain how that worked?
yeah. So during COVID, um, that was a big wave of awakening that during COVID, and there was big protests going on in London,
Yes.
and I managed to um, insert myself. Well, I didn't. How these things happen is, you know, people get in contact with you and say, "Oh, can you help?" But I managed to get involved in the protest at quite a high level, and it was really just a case of observing and supporting anyone that came my way. But that's the first part of the awakening journey: is people are angry and they take to the streets and they demand that other people change their lives for them, and they give their power away without even knowing it.
Well,
I mean, I did it.
this is a big deal. It's happening in Ireland right now.
Yeah, I'd say there's another wave of awakening coming as well, and I think we're in the middle of it. Not in the middle. I think it's just about to start. And now people from all walks of life, are looking into conspiracies. The audacity of the government. It's everywhere now. I mean, when I was into conspiracies, like no one was. Very few people. But now it seems like you can speak to anyone about it.
Do you
So
think the Epstein class, a lot of people have, quite a few people have worked out if you have the Epstein situation and all these people disappearing and babies missing and children, and that's the next stage is ETs. What do you feel about that?
yeah,
Or do
I
you
think you're
think
right.
do you think we're being corralled into a particular one type of ET to make it dangerous, and then it can bring in a lot more? You know,
Yes, and to answer your question short, yes, I think that the Epstein stuff is ritualistic by nature, and I think that they're not just getting a kick out of killing babies, um, or whatever it is they do, but I think they're probably having interactions with the entities, but not the good ones. So, and I think that that's what they're truly scared of, those people. You ask why are they doing what they're doing? Why are they doing such horrific things? Well, because they're not scared of people. They're scared of the entities potentially. So I think there is a link there, absolutely. And to go back to your second point, are they doing that to bring more in? Yes, I would say so. I
bring
can
more ETs
remember,
in,
yeah, I can
or
remember
extra
being alive.
dimensionals. How would you describe them? What would be your favorite term?
Extra dimensional, extra temporal dimensions is, I think, what we're talking about here. They can teleport, or whether our mind can't see them and then they can see them. But yeah, I have previous memories from my last life that's just gone previously, where the reptiles showed up and they killed everyone and repositioned everyone. Well, they repositioned me here, basically. Um,
Do you want to
so
explain that in detail, please?
yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So I was alive before this. I have visual memories of it. Um, And part of my role is I like to go from world to world, as it were, and try and, break down the control system that's in that world, whether it be the system. I mean, even gravity is a control mechanism in the illusion. And I was in this world, and we seem to have broken it, um, and that was problematic for the reptiles, as it turned out, because what started to happen after that was all around us, there was a group of maybe 20 people, and all around us, there were these golden spheres of light that appeared, and they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They kept growing until they got so big that they were touching the floor. And once they were touching the floor, out from each of these golden spheres, there was hundreds of them. And no one really knew what was going on. At the time, it was uncharted territory for us. But once the spheres of light hit the ground, um, they out comes 7 to 12 feet tall bipodular reptiles, and they just begin to attack everyone and kill everyone. They latched onto me onto my left leg. I fell over, and then you'll probably be familiar with this. If you've got a camera with a slow shutter speed and you're taking a photo at night of the highway, and you can see all the lights slipping across the image. Well, as I was dying, that began to happen until the scene turned to black, and then after it turned to black, have recognition of being in a smaller baby's body in the womb. I can only presume with my mother's womb. And if you take a flashlight or a torch and you put it under your thumb, you can see it's all red. There's that similar effect all around me. I was in some kind of liquid, and I was being juddered around by a heartbeat. And then after that point, my memory cut out, and it wasn't until I could verbalize words. I had said to my mother, I said, I'd been chased by a crocodile. Must have been 4 or 5 years old, something like that.
I have to say, I had some kind of similar experience about the crocodiles at the bottom of the bed.
Yeah, it seems to be a theme, reptile by nature. And I kept saying I'd been chased by a crocodile. I'd been chased by a crocodile. And of course, my mother thought to herself, well, you've never seen a crocodile. I then asked her about it 20 years later after having contact. And I said, did I ever mention about being chased by a crocodile? She said, yeah, you wouldn't shut up about it for months. I said, okay, interesting.
Did you have to leave the bedroom light on or the whole light on? Sometimes
No,
people need the light on just in case.
no, I'm not really scared of much. Uh, like I feel fear, but I'll do it anyway if I feel fear,
Just before we move on, can you describe your actual death experience? I mean, what happened then?
Yeah, so these golden spheres of light appeared, and out comes these 7 to 12 feet tall bipodular reptiles. They got me on the leg, and I fell over.
What do you mean, got you on the leg? Injured
Well,
you?
they moved really quick. I thought I went to think to myself, like, oh damn, I need to move, right? But I got as far as oh damn, and this thing had died right across. It was on this side of me, and it died right over to me. Quickest I've never seen anything move so quick. And it just started to attack me. It grabbed my leg and knocked me down to the floor, and it just I didn't feel any pain at that point. I think the body knew I was going to die potentially, but then again, my vision just kept. Like I said, what I can see just kept slipping around until it was all the colors are just, mixed into blackness. And then the darkness subsided, and I found myself in a womb, basically, from what
But
I
you
can
can't
understand.
recall anything in between that. You extracted yourself.
No, I don't quite know what happened. The only way I could perceive it was how I can perceive right now.
Okay.
And my vision went to blackness. My body, I didn't feel my body anymore. It was so quick that the transition was quick. It was like 5 seconds. From my whole vision going black to actually being in a new body, it was no more than 5 to 6 seconds. And it was all very quick. From when they came out the golden spheres to me being in a new body, it was maybe 15 seconds.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. I would say that was them putting us back into a prison state, as it were, potentially. Um,
i.e., our so-called existence here.
yeah, exactly
Or
that.
am I putting words in your?
No, you've hit the nail on the head, spot on. And then I'm young. I'm not reading David Icke at this point. You know, I think
Well, I
in the
think a lot of
'90s.
David Icke stuff at the start was Jordan Maxwell and Anthony J. Hilda. A lot of the old stuff from the 80s, 90s.
Yeah, but I definitely wasn't reading any of that stuff at 4 or 5 years old. I mean, I started reading that stuff when I met Dave, really, in 2008. That was the first time I started reading any of that stuff. Um, so yeah, it was. I found that strange how people write about reptiles in this world, and I have the visual memories from that.
What sort of color were these reptilians? Or, I mean, did you get have you since been able to get a identifiable reptilian race type?
I'm not too clued up on the race types, but I can definitely tell you what they look like.
But
They
I mean, have you
were.
seen any of the types of beings? I mean, Elena Denan has a book called Alien Races.
Hmm,
It's a modern version of the original Soviet manual on different types of aliens, and there's a lot of very graphic drawings in
well,
that. To be worth, well, maybe
you have to have a. I'll have to have a look and just have a read through it because it
I
might.
think it's a useful reference book. You're not going to be able to buy the original Soviet one or Russian one, but Alien Races
Hmm.
book, I think she's got. There's a lot of controversy about all this, but I think the pictures. I mean, or do you recognize anything from the pictures of her drawings? Sorry, of her
I'll definitely have a
drawings.
look. I'll definitely have a look. But
It's
what I
useful as a
saw,
visual reference.
that would be good, actually. You
Elena
might have to
Denan,
send me a
Alien
link.
Race is a gift from the stars.
Okay. I'll grab a title from you afterwards. That's all right. Just because
Yeah,
I'll probably
yeah, yeah,
remember it,
yeah,
and I don't want to take my screen.
yeah.
Um, so
Okay,
um,
relay your experience. Continue.
so what they looked like were they had tails. They ranged between 7 to 12 feet tall, from what I could see, and they were scaly. They were green. Um, they had the one that got me. I didn't really see too much of the others, but they had like the spines on their head,
A
and they could.
cranial ridge.
Uh, no, it was like they had spines, like loads of spines, and the spines could move almost, but they didn't move them. They were just they seemed like they had muscles of some description. Because as it came towards me, the spines kind of went from a sort of upright position, not fully upright, to a slick back position. Um, The faces were slightly elongated jaw, like quite a big jaw. There was no cranium, like you were saying, they've got like the cranium bumps or anything like that. There was none of that. It was quite flat. The faces didn't really look human at all. The nose was, well, there was no nose. It was almost like flat. Um,
Would you be able to draw that, or have somebody draw, or is this available on Dave Hodrian's site?
I don't think this experience made it in.
Okay,
It
well,
might have done.
let's just keep talking about what you're experiencing.
And yeah, so that was what they looked like, and they were attacking, like I said, a group, quite a big group of 20 odd people, and the people were obviously human, looked just like us, we do now, and they just proceeded to attack everyone, and they moved so quickly. It's like they
Do you
didn't
think
even
it
move
was
at
some
all.
kind of a raid?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was some kind of. I think what happened is we started to break the physics of the world somehow. Gravity was doing strange things. It wasn't quite working properly. Um,
What do you mean gravity wasn't working properly?
well, it wasn't that we were floating, but it was almost like being. It felt like being on the moon all of a sudden. Like gravity wasn't as strong or as
Have
powerful.
you got a recall about the moon being on the moon?
No recall about being on the moon. The
Why
area
would
that
you
I was
reference
in,
that in terms of gravity?
just because of what the gravity's like on the moon. it's there's a higher rate or a lower rate of gravity on different planets. It was that was almost fluctuating. It was getting gravity got heavier, it got lighter, and we were in an area where there was like shrubbery and trees and things like that. It was almost like a there was hills in the background.
Any
Um,
types of shrubs or any identity of flowers or of the alien or still terrestrial or what?
just regular looking shrubbery that we'd see here. I didn't pay too much attention to it, but it from what I can recall, it seems like it was a very similar place to here. A lot of humans look like human. There was no differences. They had nose. There was no
Well,
refined
what were
features.
they wearing? Any
Nothing.
details?
Nothing. They weren't wearing anything. Oh, people. The people were wearing stuff. Just
I'm looking at styles of clothing. Any details of anything at all? Whether cars, vehicles,
no cars, no
structures.
vehicles. Just a group of people all stood in a
I mean,
sort
were
of
they wearing
group.
togas or jeans or belts?
I
A
didn't look down
uniform?
enough to see jeans or anything like that, but it just looked like regular clothing. Regular clothing from here. I can't pick out one specific thing, but I know it wasn't
I
unusual
mean, you're
enough
dealing
to
60s
notice.
style or whatever it is, what,
No, it wasn't. It was couldn't pick up a style. I don't think. It could have been
something to
slightly
give
old.
a.
It could have had that retro, slight retro vibe, but not 50s. I didn't really pick up the clothing too much because it was quite a chaotic scene. And the memories I've got were just quite
I
short.
mean,
It's
were they
just a case
wearing
of
plaid or
I'm not sure, Miles, because the where my memory starts is where gravity starts to do weird things, and then obviously my attention at that point is just on the weird stuff that's happening. So I remember looking to my right, and I remember someone stood like sort of quite close, but when I looked across, all I could really see was was his head. So I didn't really look down enough to see the clothing because beyond him was one of these golden spheres of light, and my attention was on that because it was something we'd never seen before.
I mean, now are
So
we talking
unfortunately,
about Star Trek and people, beaming down?
no,
I mean,
no,
does that fit with anything?
no. Again, there was just because of what was going on at the time was so unusual for that place. I didn't really take note of things like clothing. I could see that the person next to me had short brown hair with almost like a quiff, slightly olive skinned, regular facial features. But that was the only reason I remember that is because I was looking beyond him to the golden sphere that was forming on the other side of
I
him.
mean, do you think the light from the golden spheres made his skin look orange?
No, they did. It didn't. The light itself didn't seem to be emitting. It was just a golden sphere of light. It wasn't illuminating light from it. It was like a sphere, and it was just looked like a golden sphere. And the reason I assume it was light is because it wasn't solid. Things came out of it. It could have been a portal. It could have been anything, but it looked like
I mean, they
what I would
didn't open
imagine.
up like a door. They didn't open like.
No, just a sphere, a golden sphere that when it touched the ground, out from just straight out of it came these bipolar reptiles. And I don't really know what happened to the spheres of light after that because, like I said, it all happened so quick.
Well,
Like I was
yeah.
being attacked quite quickly, and yeah, there was that, and then you know when I was a child, after that, I was having contact even then,
Well,
but I
go
couldn't
ahead,
I
talk
couldn't
about it.
really I couldn't really see them so well, and I had what was potentially a near death experience as well growing up. I think I had meningitis. But I just remember being out of it for a few days. So I don't know if there was like attempts on my life or whatever, to try and get me early on. And there was some kind of intervention. But I'd had a few different experiences as a child. I'm sat in my bedroom playing around with my cassette tape. You used to remember cassette tapes.
Yeah, cassette tapes. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Were they music tapes, or were you recording things?
I was recording stuff. I was recording my own radio show at the time. But
Any of
just
that still exist?
no, 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 no. It was just me as a kid messing around, repeating stuff that I'd heard on actual radio shows and trying to see how I could edit it and um, things like that by recording over certain sections and trying to put music into it as well. So it's just a bit of that. But I'm doing that one day and I can hear it. It starts off with a sense of presence. It's like you can sense somebody walking into a room. It's like you can hear the air pressure change slightly.
It's a bit like when you know somebody's watching you.
And then via telepathy, I could just hear, can we stay and watch this one? Can we stay and watch this one? So I'm looking around and I look back and there are these glass-like silhouettes, like the glass-like nature of the being from 2012. But I can't see the features. I can just see straight through. But the silhouettes of people, humanoid, and again, there's like a multicolor outline around them, just a small one, just to signify their outline. And there seems to be two taller ones and two shorter ones. And I got the sense at the time it was like a family or something. And they were saying, "Can we stay and watch this one? Can we stay and watch this one?"
If I said the term "shining ones."
Yeah, almost shimmering, yeah, but translucent as well. And there was another voice that said, "No, this one's a bit long. We'll come back and see this one." And then lo and behold, the silhouettes were gone. And they try and teach me things what I can understand. One day. I got that once I had that telepathic connection, I was told to go and stand up and look in a mirror that was like a floor to ceiling mirror outside my bedroom door. And they'd say things like, "Now, is that a mirror or is that a portal? And there's just somebody preventing you from walking through."
You said something at the start about a friend of yours with his mirrors. Were these mirrors curved opposite each other?
No, just a normal floor to ceiling mirror outside my bedroom door, and then they seem to be trying to teach me things. Now I'm just a kid, so I wouldn't take that sort of so seriously about the portal and the mirror. Maybe
let's focus on what you saw and experienced.
Well, it was just telepathic messages at this point, and they were trying to say to me, the universe is basically, this is how the universe works. They said everything is a reflection and nothing exists. Nothing truly exists. And that was about the only contact that I'd had sort of growing up as a child. Then I started going to school, and then, your mind gets conditioned to not be able to see these things. I try and talk to other kids about it at school. They don't know what I'm talking about. So I just end up not forgetting about it, but you learn just to sort of not talk about it after that. And then after that, I had no more contact until sort of, things started happening in 2008. And then it went on
That's
to
quite
about
a long time.
Yeah, because I had to almost uncondition my mind from school, from society.
Why would you want to do a thing like that?
Well, school didn't really work on me so well. I just didn't take part really, but it still has an effect on you. Because why would I want to do that? It's because life is incredibly unfulfilling if you go down that rabbit hole, that rat race route, and I think there's more to life, and I think if people are able to change their perception of what's possible, potentially anyone can manifest anything they want.
Well, exactly.
whether it's UFOs or interdimensional beings or a certain situation that you might want. It's all completely possible. And once I was working at a job in finance when I met Dave. I should have been fulfilled. I was incredibly unfulfilled. I thought to myself, there's probably more to life than this. And then I sort of dropped out of society after that for a few years and changed my perception of what's possible by undoing the conditioning from school and things like that.
Precisely what do you mean by undoing? How did you do that? What procedures or whatever did you use?
So basically, school controls your perception of what's possible. It almost tells you what's possible from a very early age, and then it's your parents' conditioning which enforce what's possible. And so some of the techniques that I used were from 2008. You've got to change what's possible in your mind with your belief and your mechanisms, in your belief mechanisms. So obviously, I met Dave, which made it easier to believe that these things could happen. And listening to what Dave had to say, it created cognitive dissonance to begin with. And then what happens is you use will to override that dissonance. And once you get to the point where you can override it with your willpower, you are then able to create a new belief or an understanding. So you've got to do that for many different things. Just seeing a crop circle, I mean, most people wouldn't find themselves in a position to do that. So part of manifesting reality is just putting yourself in a position where it's possible. That's number one. Whether that's going to Wiltshire where there's crop circles every year, that's a start, because now you believe that it's possible that crop circles are real. And if crop circles are real, then
What do you
aliens could
mean
be
by
real.
real? What experiences did you have when you were in crop circles?
Well, I went to Avebury throughout the summers, and seen many different crop circles. I there's a small gift shop there where they've got a book full of all the crop circles, photographed from the air. There's a chap that goes around in his plane. So now that you've seen a crop circle, you now know that crop circles are possible. So now you've changed your belief about crop circles, and now you believe. I would say it's entirely possible because I've never seen one being made. Although there was some really great footage of one crop circle being made, and the story behind it was quite fascinating. Oh, no, this was daylight. This was daylight. The video I'm thinking of, it was daylight, and these two crop circles come down. These two orbs come down, start dancing around in a circle with each other, and then the crops just go, and the circle's there. But what's interesting is the guy that captured it. It was on one of these old cameras with the timestamps on the bottom, and there's a timeline of events where the guy was from Bristol. He had his studio in Bristol. He was in Avebury or Wiltshire somewhere. The timestamp on the video, what he did as soon as he caught it on film, he went to a renowned UFO pub in the area. Oh, yeah, it's the Barge Inn. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. The Barge Inn. That's it. Well done. And he goes straight to that pub, and he just begins to show people his footage that he got, and it's on his camera. And the timestamp on the camera at the time where he was showing people was only 20 minutes, half an hour ago, by the time he got to the pub. So there wasn't enough time to go back to Bristol, edit the footage, and then come back. The guy was so shocked by what he captured, he went straight to the Barge Inn and went to show everyone. But yeah, at that point, once you see a crop circle, you're chipping away at the conditioning and you're changing your perception of what's possible, and now you've got a new belief that hey, if crop circles are real, maybe aliens are real. Yeah, I think I've gone through just about everything in some kind of a linear sequence, you know. Um, Great, perfect. Good to see you again, Mark. Yeah, I agree. Thanks again.